Hello, I'm Dr. Lori Carnsew at our demonstration kitchen at Verity Primary Medicine and Lifestyle, and we're here today for another whole food, plant-based mini cooking demonstration. Today we're going to make tofu scramble. I get asked a lot of questions about tofu, and a lot of people have a lot of concerns about tofu. So to get started, I just wanted to show you how it comes in a package. And when you first open it, there's going to be a lot of water. You just pour that out. Tofu itself is bean curd, and yes, that sounds disgusting. And if you are to eat it plain like this brick, then it is bland and plain. So just like you would with chicken or with beans, you're going to season it and you're going to cook it. But the first thing is tofu is packed in water. This is a firm, and for this recipe you want to use a firm or an extra firm brick. So to press it, I have a tofu press. You don't have to have this fancy thing. It's just, I like kitchen gadgets. But you want to wrap it in a kitchen towel or cloth just to get the water out. I'm going to press it in here. If you don't have this, you can put it in a bowl, and I usually put big cans or weights on top of it, something so that it's a little bit squished or squashed. All right, so put it under here. And this I usually do first while I'm chopping up all the vegetables and everything else I'm gonna put in. Tofu scramble is great for breakfast or dinner. If you like omelets, this is a great alternative. Tofu is high in calcium, and it's a great substitute for people who can't tolerate dairy or have been asked to eliminate dairy. And that has been promoted, at least through most of my life, as where Americans and where we're supposed to get our calcium. However, there's so many people that can't tolerate dairy, the lactose in dairy. Actually, the vast amount of people in the world do not tolerate dairy milk greater than 1 to 2 years of old. We have an enzyme called lactase, which breaks down the lactose, which is the sugar that is in milk. And when we get older, most people lose that enzyme. Now, people of European descent happen to have a mutation where many of us still have that enzyme around and can tolerate it later. But most people, after they're a toddler and a little bit older, do not tolerate dairy very well. So you see a lot of people with diarrhea, stomach aches, cramping. If we continue to force dairy, a lot of times our digestive system adapts, usually in a maladaptive format, and sometimes we learn to tolerate the side effects or the symptoms, or we take pills to cover them up, and we don't even realize how long this has been going on until people get asked to completely eliminate dairy. So many times, for many health reasons, I've asked people to completely eliminate dairy from their diet, and they do, and we find a lot of health improvements that they didn't even realize. So for people who can't tolerate dairy or who have been asked to eliminate dairy, the question is, where do they get their calcium? Tofu is just one source of that. There's plenty of others, beans and whatnot. But this is what we're going to use today. It's a great alternative for breakfast. Why also do I want to teach whole food plant-based? When you look back from the United States Department of Agriculture data over the last 30 to 40 years, you find that we used to eat approximately 2,000 calories a day per person, and now we eat over 2,500 calories per day. So that's an actual extra 500 calories per day. And do you know how much that amounts to? I don't, because I haven't done the math, but that's probably in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 pounds a year if we're not doing extra exercise to account for that extra intake of calories. So we're taking in more calories, but we're also taking in more fats. The amount of fats that we take in from dairy has tripled in the last 30 years. And a lot of that is cheese. The amount of cheese that we eat has about tripled in the last 30 years. What about healthy foods? Red meat, that has gone down a little bit because everybody says, oh, I don't eat red meat, I don't eat that bad meat. What about chicken? We have doubled the intake of chicken. So this all adds up. These are all fats that add up in our diet, and this is that extra 500 calories a day. The other thing that we eat as Americans When you look at our standard American diet, or I like to call it SAD, S-A-D for standard American diet, what we consume as Americans, 62% of what we consume is processed foods. So these are foods that are high in sugars, they're high in refined flours, they're high in fats and oils, and basically they have very little, if no, nutritional value. And 63% of our calories every day are coming from those foods. And so it's no wonder that we have chronic disease, because if most of our calories are coming from these foods, the foods like what you see here with the bright colors and the nutrients and the vitamins and the minerals that we need for our bodies to function, we're not getting enough of that. And you can't substitute that by taking a multivitamin or taking a supplement. You really need to get it from the whole food. And when you look at the masses and masses of data, and whether it's historical data based on cultures, or it's little studies based on small amounts of people, or it's long-term cancer studies following patients and seeing what they eat. When you take all that data and you look at the big picture and everything together, you find that eating the whole food is essential for getting our cells to function properly. So that is why I recommend, getting more food. If we can get rid of those 63% of processed food, and what we eat, 63% of the processed food, the other numbers are 12% of that comes from plants and 25% of it comes from animals. And of the 12% that comes from plants, those numbers also include ketchup because it comes from tomatoes. That includes apple pies. So there's still a lot of processed foods included in that 12% plants. And what that number really needs to be somewhere more like 80 or even closer to 100% to get the healing properties of those. So what we need on a cellular level to make our body perform is more of the plants, less of the processed food, less of the saturated fats, and a lot of those fats are from dairy and meat such as chicken. And that's why this recipe is going to help out. So what we've done, you can take any vegetables you like. So I look this as a substitute for scrambled eggs or an omelet. We're kind of doing the typical American here. We've got about 1.5 green peppers cut up. And this is what we have left in the refrigerator right now. You can substitute what you like. This is about half of a tomato. This is 1 shallot and a clove of garlic, because I like garlic in everything. And these are great for the inside of your gut. So onions and garlic and items such as leeks are something we should have on a regular basis if you can tolerate it. This is what a shallot or shallot, depending on how you speak, looks like. It's a small onion, and these can be found in the produce section near the onions. They taste like onions. To me, it's just a fancy onion. We are going to use scallions and parsley just to put on top. And then this is nutritional yeast. Get a close-up of this. This is a cheesy-like substance. It doesn't taste like cheese to me. Most people say it has a cheesy taste, but it's very high in B vitamins. And for somebody who happens to be vegetarian or vegan, where they take no animal protein at all, then you have to worry about B12 deficiencies. Nutritional yeast actually contains a good amount of B12, so it's a great supplement, whether you eat animal protein or any meat at all. And it gives a nice flavor for tofu scrambles and many other dishes. So I also have a few pieces of kale left, and I'm going to use this as a green to add into my scramble. And I'm just going to take, you can leave the stems on, but they're very woody. So this is kind of how I do kale, just pull those off the stems. These have been in the refrigerator for about 3 weeks because we are distancing right now, and I have not been back out to the produce store, but kale is one of the things that lasts quite a long time. So I'm just going to chop these roughly, and we'll put these at the end of our cooking time. I'm always of the idea that the more you can get greens into your diet, the better. I could do a whole nother episode on the value of greens. But if you don't try and think about how you're getting all these vegetables in, it's going to be hard to get the recommended amount, which I recommend of 8 to 10 servings a day of fruits and vegetables. So just throwing some greens in with your breakfast is a good way to add that extra serving. And I'm just going to roughly chop them. Try not to talk and chop because I don't know how chefs do it and not chop their fingers, but I have to pay attention. You can cut these smaller if you like, but that's a good rough chop. So let's move over to the saute pan. So we've heated the pan here, and I'm going to use the onions and garlic first. So you see I haven't used oil because oil are 100% fats, and we have also tripled the amount of cooking oils that we use as part of those calories over the last 30 years. So there's really no need. If you use a non-stick pan, you usually don't need it. Onions and peppers tend to have a good amount of water anyways, but you could always add on here a spoonful of water or even vegetable broth if it tends to stick to your pan. You don't want to use a high. I'm on a medium-low heat right now. Garlic scalds very easily and becomes bitter, so you don't want to get that bitter taste, and never put the garlic on high heat. So I'm just going to let these cook up a little bit. I'm going to turn it just a little bit higher. Okay, so as you can see, our onions have started to get a little translucent, change color just a little bit. And they're not sticking at all in this nice pan. I usually like to use maybe twice as much onion as this. It's just per your taste. And now I have the tofu, which has been pressed, so it's a little dry. And you can just crumble this right into the pan. So it's a little messy in your hand, but it'll crumble. And you're just going to cook it up and then use a spoon to chop it. I just use a spoon or a spatula. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. You don't want it too high. And then once the tofu is good, I'm adding in the nutritional yeast. And I'm going to do a teaspoon of turmeric. Maybe a little more. This gives it a nice yellow color, which kind of makes us almost feel like we're eating an egg, which it's not, but for some reason that yellow color is pretty. But even more importantly, turmeric is a great antioxidant, one of the most powerful antioxidants, and it has a little flavor. And I'm going to do about a tablespoon of chili powder. So I'm just going to dump it. I like to add also to this a hot pepper or jalapeno, maybe some smoked paprika. You can add other things like soy sauce or liquid smoke if you really like it smoky. But it takes a while to get all this yeast and dry ingredients mixed in. So you just want to stand here and keep mixing and mixing. And it starts to look like a scramble. Pepper. I like a lot of pepper. And then I'm going to go ahead and add our peppers that we've cut up. You can substitute other vegetables if you're kind of making this with what you have at home. Asparagus is a great vegetable that's going to be in season soon. You can use broccoli. You can use take it over. Carrots, whatever vegetable you like. Snap peas are good. Mushrooms, I forgot mushrooms. We've been out of mushrooms this week. I'm chopping it because I just want to make sure all this flavor gets into the tofu, because you just don't want those bland, plain pieces. That's why people think they don't like tofu, because they usually had the little square chunk with hardly any seasoning, and yeah, that doesn't taste good. It's all in the flavor. I'm going to add in then tomatoes, which I'm putting it in at the end. I'm also going to add some black salt. This is salt from, I try not to use a lot of sodium, but really the majority of sodium that we get in our diet comes from cheese and chicken. So if you are adding a little salt to your own food and you're not using a lot of processed food, your salt intake is still going to be lower. This salt comes from the Black Sea in India. You usually have to order it from a specialty food store or a spice shop. But it smells like eggs, and it has that sulfur smell, and it just has a very good taste. So I like to add a little bit right at the end. You can use sea salt or Himalayan salt or no salt at all, just whatever you prefer as seasoning. Use more pepper. So this is the finished product. It doesn't take long to cook, just enough to heat, and it looks really good. I'm so hungry. And then I'm going to use a little bit of garnish on top with the scallions. You can use as much or as little as you like. And Sam has chopped up some parsley for us, and you can wait until you serve this. I'm just going to throw it right over the whole pan so you can see. And last, I like to put the kale in. It looks like a lot, but within a minute or two, you see that this steams down and gets a little softer and breaks down, makes it easier to chew. Just make a little bit here. Just keep stirring, that all gets incorporated nicely. Great color. Color is a good guide to food, as long as it's not artificial food colors. If you've got bright greens and reds and yellows and purples, you know that it's very nutrient dense. And that's what we want to do, is really try and get the most nutrient dense food we can and eliminate the things that are harmful to us, like the saturated fats and the sugars and a lot of these additives that we just don't need, and get more of this food to fill us up. Thank you for joining us. I hope this gives you a little more options in the kitchen and gets you a little bit braver about trying some new foods and cooking. And really, this is a delicious meal. The first few times I made it, it felt like it just took forever and it was difficult to make. But once you've done it a few times and you feel free to throw in what you like, that becomes just as easy as making an omelet or a pot of scrambled eggs.